Welcome. Glad you could join me on this brief discussion about my presentation for information and content strategy. This is actually the culmination of several months of learning a lot about knowledge management, communication, research methods, as well as how to better communicate ideas and concepts with your audience. I think I've learned a great deal, and I think you will see that in my presentation. So what I try to do is take a segment that's important to me, and that is the financial sector in which I work, and look at it as it were a book that has volumes to speak and needs to be talked about. And I say that because when I walked into the organization which I worked, I looked at the organization chart and I saw at the leadership level no one that looked like me. And why is that important? Because diversity is important, and diversity has value. So as you walk me through this presentation, you will see the various aspects of knowledge management, communication, research, all those good things. The idea is to present this information in a very visually appealing way, in such a way that as we have conversation and dialogue and we go over this material, that each and every person that is in the audience will feel that they have learned something, that this presentation has value. But more or less, that the knowledge that we gather from this will be utilized in improving diversity within the organization. I thank you for taking this opportunity with me, and I hope you enjoy the presentation.
What would the world look like if everybody were aware of the stereotypes that they have and the biases that they have? When we talk about unconscious bias, we're basically saying our worldview can actually exert an influence beyond our conscious awareness, and it creates ambiguity.
You go to an engineer who's built something extremely innovative, and you say, who do you think your user is? This is where I have the most fun. My name is TV Raman, and I led our work on Android accessibility for 3 years. Write down everything that you think you know about your user with respect to abilities, inabilities, special abilities, disabilities. Almost every assumption that you write down on that whiteboard about this is the user I think I'm building for is questionable, because our various unconscious biases define the boundaries you're unwilling to expand.
These biases, they're the shortcuts that our brain has created so that we can deal with the information that we process every single day.
Right when we see anyone, whether we think about it or not, we are implicitly, automatically making judgments about how warm, incompetent that person or thing is.
All humans need to make decisions, and so we fill in the blanks because our brains are wired to do that, and we fill in with things we don't know with, past experience. Oh, you pattern map to someone I think I should hire, so I'm going to hire you versus this person because they didn't map, because I can't fill in the blank because they don't look like me or they're not from my same background, and so I can't see how they're going to make the jump.
Every single person is great at things that you may not expect them to be, but it's really hard for us to see that when we're so powerfully guided by the things we expect to be true in the world.
I grew up surrounded with this conversation about what you can't do and what you won't be able to do. My name's Enrico, and I'm an autistic software engineer. The first time I go through the performance review process, I was asked for 5 strengths. It was the first time that I had ever been prompted to think in that way about myself, and it was really a life-changing moment for me.
When we are working in our day-to-day jobs, we are still making judgments about the people around us, about the resumes we see, about the employees that we're trying to decide, whether to put them on teams or not.
People are very wedded to the idea that they can perceive something objectively, and statistically they're wrong, but it's hard. You become attached to this idea that you can assess something by looking at it.
These subtle assumptions we make about people can have lasting effects on who we're promoting, who we're hiring, who we're putting in leadership positions. We have the responsibility to understand the assumptions that we make and understand the errors that we make.
But it's not just for the collective good. If you take the time to understand more about this, there are things that you can implement for yourself that'll help you develop as a leader and to do your job even better.
It made me realize how often I have a very strong belief that is simply incorrect. When I look at one of these evaluation situations, the first question is, how can I eliminate the sources of potential bias and leave just the data so we can actually make better decisions?
If you're not conscious of the biases that you have, you're just not contributing at the level that you could, and you're not innovating at the level you could. And so your products won't be as good. Your results won't be as good.
When you think outside the box with respect to the assumptions you made about how somebody would use this wonderful thing you built, and when you sort of broaden that perspective as to who you change the world for, you build something even bigger.
Now that we've seen the video for bias, the unconscious bias that each and every one of us exhibits, I'd like to elaborate on it a little bit. I think that the bias is what affects each and every organization in the financial sector, whether it be the government, private corporation, or public corporation. This bias affects the ability for organizations to be as diverse as they could be and to represent the society at large in which it exists, whether it be on a national level or on a local level, as in the city of Chicago. The following slides will represent different aspects of the financial sector, including the government sector, the private and public sector as well. I'd like to also emphasize that I did take the time to discover a little bit more about the organization in which I work as well. One of the things that I found fascinating while doing my research was the fact that JP Morgan Chase had publicly published their diversity report. It's quite unusual because as I looked at other financial firms, I could not find this information. As a matter of fact, in some cases, there was very little information about diversity at all. In some cases, there were a lot of marketing information around diversity, but no data. So what we can see here is what we've also discovered about the Chicagoland area, as well as the government sector, is that senior leadership and leadership positions are far more likely to be someone who is not an ethnic minority. And as you can see, African Americans are, of the major ethnic groups, is the lowest segment of JP Morgan's executive leadership team, even though they might be 33% of the population in general in the Chicagoland area. The point of this slide is really to represent the importance of data. It's one thing to look at an organization chart at a point in time. It's another thing to look at an organization chart with the underlying information that indicates the level of commitment to diversity. And so what this represents is taking the data and presenting the data as well as the organization chart to create a sense of commitment to meeting specific targets for improving diversity. Having visibility to the data regarding diversity is quite important. However, most organization charts are a snapshot in time, as well as the data about the organization is typically a snapshot in time. The recommendation is to use more of a trend type setup so that you can see the changes in diversity over time, which is really what's important. It would represent whether diversity is increasing, diminishing, or remaining the same. And that is helpful in the times when organizations go through different transitions, people leave the company, or the company has layoffs. So the idea is to represent that data year over year. The following slides will show how to represent that data in chart format or some type of trend analysis or diagram. I think that what this presentation has shown is that there is evidence that the financial sector has a problem with diversity in its commitment at all levels of leadership, not only in the Chicagoland area, but also nationwide, in the public, private, and government sector. Secondarily, the problem is not only historical, but has apparently remained stagnant since the Government Accountability Office began reporting in 2007. Now, of course, that's only the reporting, but of course we know that this problem goes back as long as there have been organizations operating where minorities have been a part of the workforce here in the U.S. And of course, we saw the same example in the firm in which I worked in the Chicagoland area. So my conclusion is that there is a problem with diversity and not having a commitment to diversity. So presenting this information and having conversations around it hopefully will enlighten the mind and open up new dialogue. Thanks.